We are excited today to have Susan Quilty. She's an author and also writer of many novels. And we're going to talk about this today. And she got me already two books from, what she wrote in the past. So I'm excited to read them. Susan, thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us a little bit first, a little bit bio about you, who you are, how do you, what do you do, and how did you get to, to inspire you to start to write?
Well, I'm Susan Quilty. I am a local author. I have written, 4 novels now, plus these 2 books. 2 of my novels are standalone, and 2 are part of a series that I'm writing a 3rd book for now. So I began writing, really, it's hard to say when I started writing. My earliest memories are from writing stories. Before I even could write words, I used to take these refrigerator magnets that were little like people and trees and flowers, and I would put them down and trace them and make up stories and have my mom help me figure out how to write words with them. So I've been making up stories and telling them my whole life. It wasn't a career right away because when I first became an adult, I, like most of us, or all of us, had bills to pay and had to get other jobs. So I started off working in IT, and so I worked in the computer field for a while, and I worked in telecom, and then eventually I decided to make a switch, and I started writing freelance work. So I did not fiction. I did all kinds of freelance writing for print magazines and online, lots of different people, and I did that for about 8 years or so. And the problem was, since I spent all of my time writing all of these articles on personal finance or real estate and all these kinds of things, I would get done at the end of the day and I'd want to write my own stories, and I was just tired from all that writing, so I had a hard time doing that. So what I did was, I had been practicing yoga for my entire adult life, so I went and got certified in yoga.
Nice.
And I started teaching yoga on the side so that I could drop some of my freelance and write my own books. And that's how I started writing novels, and my first one was published in 2017. So I've been writing books ever since.
So you've been writing from that time?
So I've been writing novels since then. So I've stopped doing my freelance work. I was doing both for a while, but pretty soon, I think within a year or 2 after my first book came out, I stopped the freelance writing and was able to just keep writing my novels and other stories. I also have a podcast now, and I still teach yoga on the side.
Oh, nice. Busy.
Yes.
Full agenda every day. So, growing up, did you think you want to be a writer one day? I mean,
yes.
Is that something? Oh, okay.
Yes, I always wanted to be a writer. My parents were supportive, but they also understood that was maybe a difficult career choice to get into as far as paying the bills and all of that. So that's why I ended up kind of going in a different route for a while. But it's always been my love. It's always been something I wanted to do.
Yeah. So, talk to me about your first book. So, how did you come up with the title? What what attracted you to have this title of your first book? What is the title of your first book?
So my first book is The Insistence of Memory, and it is it's contemporary fiction that has a sci-fi and mystery twist. So I came up with this idea many years before I actually wrote the novel. I was working on it in bits and pieces, and first I'll tell you a bit about what it's about. It's the story of a young widow who discovers that her husband had created a machine in their basement that can record memories and play them back in somebody else's mind. So you can watch someone else's memories. This is a very mad scientist, illegal kind of a thing that he has going. And so after he has died, his partner wants to finish it. It's not a finished project. She's very concerned because of the ethics of it, and also because she's worried about things from her past that might come out. So the story just kind of goes from there. When I first came up with the idea, it was a very difficult than what it ended up being. And it came to me because at the time there was a lot of reality TV, and people were just watching each other in their lives. And I had this moment of thinking, gosh, what's next? Are we going to start watching each other's memories? And then that led to the machine and the story and all of that. Although I worked on that book on and off for probably like 8 or more years before I finally.
Wow.
Yeah, when I finally sat down to write it, it took me about 1.5 years.
Wow.
But it was many years before that of just kind of on the side putting it together.
Wow. So what was the most surprising things you learned while you are writing your books?
Surprising things. Well, I learned a lot. Well, I learned about so many things. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about my process and what works for me. I am the kind of writer who likes to plan everything out and have a lot of outlines, and I have spreadsheets, and I have little note cards, and I put them up on a board, and I rearrange them, and I have all of this. But even though I have a very steady plan, I also like to just change things on the fly. So I'll be writing along, I'm writing, and I'm listening to my characters. And one of the things I guess that surprised me when I first started writing more fiction is how once you create your characters, at least for me, and I sit down and I'm writing about them, the characters can sometimes just kind of take over the story on their own. I'll be writing a conversation, and then they start talking about something, and I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. Why didn't I think of that? And they're like, wait, no, I did. But was it me, or was it that they're not real? Yeah, it's a very strange experience, but it's beautiful to listen to where the story wants to go and have more of an organic kind of a feel for it. Let it evolve.
Did you have any time you have kind of difficulty or difficult part about writing something, like when you are writing the book?
Definitely. There are challenges. There are challenges all the time. I think one of the biggest challenges is just when you sit down to the blank page. And I have the idea, and I have the plan, and I know exactly what I want to happen. But then sometimes the words just don't come. Sometimes I get into that flow and it gets going and it's fabulous, but sometimes it's just harder. So I'll have to pull back and remind myself that nobody else is going to see my first draft. Like, I'm just throwing the words out there.
Yeah.
I like to think of it as if I were sculpting, if I was making a sculpture, like a beautiful statue. I wouldn't be able to just start with a finished statue. I'd have to start with clay. And just a big lump of clay is not very pretty. It's just there, and then you mold it, you shape it, and you make it this beautiful piece of art. So my first draft is kind of like that clay. I think it doesn't matter if it's ugly and messy and it's not really what I want it to be. I just have to put the words out and make that clay, and then I can go back and I can reread it, and I can edit it, and I can shape it, and I can turn it into what I want it to be.
So did you edit your own?
Well, I mean, I have professional editing and beta readers and all of that too. But I mean, when I said editing, I meant more just going back and rewriting. Because I write things over and over and over again until I get them to the point where they're ready for editing.
Yeah. So is there a lot to do before you dive in and start writing a book?
So there are different styles. So I mentioned that I really am a big planner. So I do like to outline and research, and I constantly research everything. But there are other people. The term is pantser, so they fly by the seat of their pants is what they call it, where they just jump in and they just start writing and they just see what happens. That is actually what I do on my podcast. So I have my podcast, it's called Freely Written, and this came about because I am such a planner and I research and I do this. I wanted to make sure I still have some playtime where I just play with my imagination and I just let my imagination go. So for fun, I will sit down with a prompt, like a phrase or a word, and I'll just think, what comes to my mind, anything, and I'll just start typing, and I turn it into a short story. Wow. So I was doing that just for fun, and then I thought, hey, this could be a podcast. Wow. So that's what my podcast is. Every other week I have a new story. One just came out yesterday, where I will get a word or a phrase from maybe a person will tell me one, or just randomly in life, something will come up, and I just look around and say, a plant or whatever, something, whatever it is, and I put it out there, and I'm like, that's what I'm going to start writing about. And then whatever story comes out, they're all about 10 minutes long, really short, and I put them out there, and it can be anything. They can be funny, they can be serious, they might be a little mystery, might be a little sci-fi, might be a little fantasy, anything at all, whatever comes into my mind. And I like to encourage people to use this as an inspiration for them to just go out and play with your writing. Just play with your imagination, just have fun with it.
Wow. So where do you see, Susan, the book industry leading in the future?
So there's been a lot of change in the industry over the last decade or two, and it's continuing to change, and there's a lot of different ways it's changing. So the traditional publishing route is still a viable option for some people, but self-publishing is on the rise, and a lot of people who are traditionally published are switching to a hybrid model where maybe they do some of their work through a traditional publisher and some of it is self-published. There's also much more emphasis on audiobooks, which is something I haven't done yet, but that's my next step. When I get my next book out, I'm planning to look into really get serious about getting my books out in audiobooks because it fits into people's lives in a nice way where they can listen to their audiobooks.
Even when they're driving.
Right, driving or cleaning or, that's when I listen to my podcasts and things, or I'm cleaning the house or in the car, or actually I don't do it so much in the car because I like to focus on my driving. It's distracting, but I will do it for folding laundry and all of that. It's great to listen to. So I can see a big rise in that. And otherwise, I think it's been interesting to watch how during lockdown with COVID and the pandemic, there were actually an increase in book sales.
Yeah, and I want to tell you that, I notice right now, because I am, out a lot, and now that in Fairfax, I'm meeting a lot of people that they're writing books. And maybe that was the time when, the COVID, where probably people, didn't have much to do.
Right.
And they love to write.
Yes, I think more people started writing, more people had time to read, and I think during that period, even once people got back to their normal jobs, their normal lives, that maybe they had rediscovered a love of reading or writing that they're still hanging on to going forward. So I'm hopeful that it's good for the book industry.
Yeah. So what advice would you give a new writer?
So I think one of the
I would say, like someone just start, not like somebody already already wrote like a couple of books.
Sure.
A new starter.
I would tell them to think about why they want to write, because there are so many benefits to writing books, and or writing books, or writing plays, or poetry, or nonfiction, memoirs, whatever you want to write. There are so many benefits to it, but I think it's important to have an idea of why you want to do it from the beginning.
Yeah.
Do you want to have published books? Are you writing this as stories just to have for yourself or hand down to your family? There's not really one reason that's better than others, as far as I'm concerned. There's so many different ways to do this, and you don't have to follow the same path as anyone else. You don't have to be, if I'm not a best-selling author, then there's no point. You don't have to have that kind of attitude. You don't put that pressure on yourself to meet other people's expectations. Think about what you want to get out of the writing and why you want to do it, and then try to just stay true to that, to yourself.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, I would say take classes. Even if you love writing and you have great ideas, go take workshops, read books on writing, learn about the craft of writing. There's so much out there that can help you. Join writing groups online or in person, wherever you can, meet with other writers, and really take the time to learn beyond just your own approach, because it will make things easier as you go.
Wow, this is nice. Thank you for helping on that. For everybody who is new writer listening now. Any favorite books you did read during the last couple of years, and what book you are reading right now?
middle right now. Actually, I just finished reading a book, and I starting another one. So I read a lot. My goal is I try to read 2 fiction books and 1 nonfiction book every month. And then if I read beyond that, great, but that's like my goal. So let's see, favorite books. And I would say that one book, let's start with nonfiction, and I'll say from the nonfiction books, I recently read a book that I was very impressed with, and it's called What Happened to You? And it's Oprah Winfrey and I think his name's Bruce Perry. And it's this fascinating book about recovering from trauma, childhood trauma, things in your life, and how it talks a lot about how your brain develops and how your brain responds when you're in stressful situations or when things remind you of hard times from the past. And I just found it to be a really brilliant book. I've read a lot on that subject already, but this one just hit me in a little bit of a different way. It's written in a very conversational style, so it's Oprah talking to Dr. Perry and back and forth, and they're having this lovely conversation throughout the book, and it's really a fascinating read. So I like that one a lot.
What Happened to You?
What Happened to You?
Mm-hmm.
It's a really good book. And then on the fiction side, I mean, favorite's hard to say.
What about favorite writer?
I have a lot. I was just thinking, when you said favorite book, one of the things that came to mind was I love Kurt Vonnegut, and one of his books that is, I think, lesser known, but really still relevant, it's called Player Piano, and it's either his first or one of his first novels, and it was written sometime, I think, in the 50s, I forget, but it was futuristic at the time, which of course now it doesn't mean the technology is very different and all of that, 'cause it's a much older book, but it's a really, really good book about these themes of kind of technology and where this kind of dystopian future, which still are relevant today. So I think that's a really good book. Then I have so many different authors that I just love. I just finished rereading a book by Leanne Moriarty called What Alice Forgot, which is just a really fun read. It's about a woman who has she falls out of her bike in a swing class and she hits her head and she has amnesia and she thinks that it's 10 years earlier, and so she's going through this whole weird period where she's like, in her life she doesn't remember having kids, she doesn't remember any of this, but she has this family. It's a really fun read that I just finished.
Wow.
So that's good.
Yeah. Time to read.
Yeah, I try to make time to read. It's challenging to make time to read when I'm really busy, but what I do is I fit it in different times during the day.
They say like time management, so you have a good time management.
When you realize you can read just little small 15 minutes here and there, and you can get a lot. So I'll sit and instead of putting the TV on, like I'm gonna have lunch, I'll grab out a book and I'll read while I'm eating lunch, and then go back to work. Or I will I like to read while I use my recumbent bike, my exercise bike, which is it's safe. I'm not going to fall off that. I can't read on the treadmill. That would be dangerous. But on the bike, I can read. So I'll read then. I just read kind of whenever I can. I also listen to some of it while I'm like folding and doing that too, so that the stories.
Which one of your books was the highest sold?
Oh, that's hard to say. I think probably my first book still, because it's been out longer than the others. I'm trying to think when I go. I think I actually haven't looked at those statistics in a while. But when I go to events and things too, it still stands out a lot. Although lately, since I'm working on the series, I'm writing a young adult series, and the 3rd book of it now, and so that has actually been doing really well because I think a lot of people love young adult books. So it's written. When I say young adult, I tend to say it's 13 and up, but I think most of the people who read it are adults. It's a mostly an adult reader base, but it's the series is called The Psychic Traveler Society, and it is about a 14-year-old girl who's just starting high school, and then she discovers that there's this house that she always thinks about, this big, beautiful Victorian house, and she suddenly realizes if she opens the door in that house, she can step through and be transported to this strange new world. And so that's the psychic travel part of her Psychic Traveler Society. She discovers then there's this whole secret society that exists kind of as a shadow organization under our own world. And so as the books develop, she gets to know more about the society, she gets to travel to different worlds, and so that series has been doing really well. I think it connects with a lot of different readers, both younger readers and older readers, and you can appreciate a lot of different elements in it, and it has a lot of different fantasy and sci-fi, and it's still set in our own world. And so,
and you are now writing
the third book. It'll be 3-book trilogy. It'll be just 3 books. So I'm writing the 3rd book of it now. Yep. And so it's exciting. It's actually I should say I've written it. I'm in the final editing stages of it because it's coming out.
When it will be out?
It should be out before the end of summer.
Oh, so I have to read the first one and the second.
Yeah, there are 2 books.
Until I got to the 3rd one.
Yeah.
Where can the readers purchase your book?
So my books are available. I say most of my books are available pretty much anywhere. Amazon, of course, is always the easiest place to find them, and
quicker.
They are paperback, and they are in the Kindle format. You can buy them pretty much anywhere else online, or many different sources. Barnes and Noble, or you can get the Nook version also, the ebook. You can get them as ebooks through like Apple Books, all those places. If you go to my website, each book, it has a page of where you can buy it. There's lots of links. They're very easy to find. The only book that's the exception is Audrey and Esther by Greenville. So this is my Choose Your Ending book, and this is actually an Amazon exclusive, and there's no ebook version. It's only paperback. I wrote this during COVID lockdown, so toward the end of 2020. I really wanted some fun, light, silly project after everything, which is not what I normally write, but I just really wanted that. So it's a Choose Your Ending style book. So every few pages you have a choice that you pick, and then you go to that page to see what happens next. And you move through the whole book just getting different stories. And so as you move around, there are 22 possible endings. You can get a different story. Every time you pick it up, you start and you just keep taking different choices, you get different endings. The twist on it is that I put in, so the story is called Audrey and Esther, Geekify Greenville. It's 2 friends, Audrey and Esther, who are spending the weekend at the Geekify Greenville Pop Culture Con. So what I added a twist where there are 3 kind of main storylines that are either science fiction, fantasy, or rom-com. And then, depending on the choices you make, you might get any of those style stories, or more likely, you'll get a mix of those different things. And it's all the silly tropes, so it's like, there might be wizards, or aliens, or like weird love triangles, and like all the things you find in those different genres, and they're all just mixed up. So it's lots of like just silly fun.
That's what I'm going to start with.
It's fun.
And it looks like it's not big. It's only like 190 pages.
Yeah.
So the story, it's not like a long.
Well, and that's the thing. When you pick it up, since you're making choices and you're jumping around through the book, you're not reading it straight through, you might end up with a story that takes you 5 to 10 minutes to read, or you might end up with a story that can just keep going and going for 30 minutes or so or longer, and then next time you pick it up, you get a completely different story. So,
Interesting.
yeah, it's a lot of fun.
We will share the link of your website. I think this will be the easiest thing. They can click and read about you a little bit, and wherever they want to go to order it from, that will be available for everybody. Suzanne, thank you very, very much for being here today. I am so ambitious to read those 2 books. I'm going to be at the beach in 2 weeks, so I will be reading those books. And I like to email the writer and tell them, what did I think about those
I would
books.
love that. I'd love to hear what people think, so please do.
And we will be definitely looking forward for your 3rd book of the series, which is going to come out soon. Thank you very much for being here again. We appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for all your great work. So.